Much I was digging the land with my brogues on me feet and my spade in me hand. And I said to myself, such a pity to see such a fine strapping lad when 12 and traily. With me totem binya, with me totem binya, with me totem and yodem, yodem binya. So I buttered me brogues and shook hands with me spade, and I went to the fair like a dashing young blade. Then I met me a sergeant, he asked me to list a grimace to sergeant, stick the bob in me fist. First like, first comment, first viewer. Lots of firsts today with Taylor. Thank you so much. You know I appreciate the constant and quick support. Let me switch over to the channel live chat over here on this other phone so that I keep an eye on things. Keep in mind, you know, as usual, after we've done about an hour for everybody, we will keep the stream itself public, but we'll be going to a members-only live chat. So make sure you sign up for those memberships or get them gifted now while there's lots of people in and coming in and everything. So that way there can be as many people participating when we get to that stage as possible. Only this quick when I'm already in the app. Yeah. Well, too, YouTube is not always the best about sending out my notifications is the other thing. Sometimes it do, sometimes it don't, nah. But yeah. I don't have a specific news story or anything like that in mind to talk about today. I don't remember. Well, no, I guess there is one thing that I kind of am hoping that we can talk about a little bit, which is the highly religious and braggadocious nature of this international state funeral that Iran is putting on for Ayatollah Khameini, and what that represents as a symbol, what it represents for like the state of religious fundamentalism in the involved nations. And also what it has to say about what we should maybe do in the future when it comes to big leaders like this. But we'll get there. Should I tell my parents I want to be trans and be a girl? I mean, it depends on your situation, hon. Honestly, it really does just depend on your situation. If you are like an adult and you are able to work and live on your own, more or less, 99% of people are, then yes, after you establish yourself a safety net, no one should live in the closet. It just leads to resentment. It just leads to projection, resentment, sometimes self-harm and suicide. It's a horrible thing. You should never stay in the closet merely to satisfy the small-minded, bigoted people that happen to live around you. But pragmatically, there might be reasons why you might want to hold off a couple years. You know, if you're 16 and you haven't graduated high school yet, you've barely started working, I would personally wait a few years, save your money up, wait until you have your own apartment, and at that point, yes. Giving advice with a bowl cut? Well, number one, these are bangs, not a bowl cut. I don't know if you're blind or unfamiliar with what a bowl cut is, but what exactly does my hairstyle have to do with me being able or unable to give advice about transition? What, do you think, like, the knowledge of a trans identity is stored in the really cute hair? What gender are you? I am a woman. Anyway, now that there's a few people in here, let's go over a quick list of things. Number one, Make sure you sign up for a membership because we've only been streaming for about 5 minutes now, but in 55 minutes, so about an hour from now, we're going to be switching to members only live chat, which means everybody will still be able to watch, but only members will be able to chat. So that's the first thing. Sign up for membership now or gift some if you want to support the channel. The other thing is, I desperately want to talk about the state funeral that Iran is putting on for their recently martyred imam, Ayatollah Khameini. If you are interested in participating in this conversation, by all means, please participate with me. If you're interested in having a different conversation, but one that's still interesting, wait a few minutes. We'll get there eventually. And please, by all means. But if your intention here is to spam, know that it will not get you anything but a ban. You are not the main character in this stream. I am. And with all that being said, welcome to the show. I'm going to turn on subs only mode so things are a little bit easier to read. I hate liberals. You know, you really don't got to scream it, right? You could just say something innocuous like Trump 2028, and that would make it clearly obvious that everything you do and are is based off of your hatred of the liberals. You know, while you're busy out there making your political decisions on the basis of hating the libs and how evil you think, like, everybody with blue hair is, you know, there's, like, actually some people, even some on your side, that are genuinely interested in politics and having a conversation and figuring out what direction we should go with policy matters. Did you know that's a thing that exists? You might figure it out if you did something besides spread vitriol in random people's live chats. What's the owl in the back? Oh, it's a box of wraps. Look up White Owl, and you'll see the logo. I love Trump, and when I see people like you, they make me cry. Why? Literally, what is there to cry over? I'm just sitting here. And I don't even look that bad compared to a lot of people doing the kind of thing I do on YouTube, honestly. I could be a lot worse for the wear. You know, I'm about 3 years away from 30, but despite that, my skin is pretty clear. I'm not that gargantuanly fat. I'm pretty fat, but I'm in the process of losing weight. I drink tons and tons of water all the time, see? Phoebe, when are you starting your rap career? Dude, that's already been going on. Haven't you heard? Ain't you never heard me rap before? I can lay down some bars. Although, I think if I did a rap song right now, I would want to do one other than the ones I normally do. I'll do it, but I tell you what, somebody needs to super chat $20. If you want to hear me rap, you need to super chat $20 or more. Anybody. Bro, I'm not retarded. You can't just type sent $20 in the chat and think that's going to work. I wasn't born yesterday. Jesus is a nonce? Well, I've never heard that particular theory, but interesting. Interesting. What is the point of the stream? I mean, genuinely not. Okay, so it should be obvious from the little discussion that we had at the very beginning of things. But the point is to have interesting political, social, religious, whatever kind of conversations, hopefully about current events and things that are relevant. But in general, it is to respond to the chat and have something like a facsimile of an interesting conversation. Damn, I'm kind of sad that nobody super chatted that 20. Because I was going to put the conversation on hold just to see if anybody wanted to pay me to rap. But since we didn't go there, Iran is currently conducting, they're in the first day of conducting an international state funeral for Ayatollah Khameini. Let me just pull up an article about it real quick, because I want to tell you guys a little bit more about it. I don't know what you're doing, but quit it. Quit it! That's so loud, bro. Ow. Anyway. So, let's see. Is the hill one of those that has a price thing on it? We'll see. See, I want to know... let's see here. What is a plan called? Itinerary. Okay, so here we go. Finally, from CNBC. Iran begins 6-day funeral for Ayatollah Khameini nearly 4 months after his death. Iran has begun a 6-day funeral procession for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei months after his death in the Middle East conflict. The ceremonies are expected to draw tens of millions of mourners and require major security measures. Yeah, no shit. I will honestly be surprised. I'm just going to say this right now. I will genuinely be surprised if the U.S. or Israel does not strike the funeral delegation or the funeral proceedings at some point. It would be well within our little fucking... Like, I don't want to say it would be well within our rules of engagement, because it most assuredly would not be. But it would be within our modus operandi. You know, it would be well within our, like, our patterns of behavior in this conflict. So I will be very surprised if they don't end up, like, launching an attack at some point on this funeral caravan, simply because that would fit so well with our patterns of behavior in this conflict. Anyway, so the procession is set to move through Tehran, Qom, Najaf, Karbala, and Mashhad before burial. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cities and 2 different countries. So yeah, Iran is staging a 6-day funeral procession for Ali Khamenei, supreme leader who led the Islamic Republic for 4 decades and was killed on the first day of the U.S.-Israeli war in February. Ceremony will begin on July 4th, nearly 4 months after Khamenei was killed, and end on July 9th. There's a whole lot of symbolism behind them starting up the funeral processions later today, basically. Like that, there's a whole bunch of symbolism behind that. The whole idea is our leader's funeral will be held on the day that the country who killed him is celebrating its independence from a tyrannical empire. Look how far the empire has fallen. That is the message. And it's just being spoken so loudly that it's amazing to me that there are still people trying to cope about it here in the West. Putting that aside, though, the funeral, which will be a tightly choreographed display of mourning, continuity, and regime control, said Sanam Vakil, director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House, told CNBC, was delayed for several months due to fighting. I mean, it was delayed for several months due to fighting, but I kind of think, like, they could have held it before, right? There's been about a month's worth of time they probably could have held it before now. They wanted to wait because they had to wait, you know, so long anyway. They wanted to wait. This is symbolic. Every single bit of this, every decision that has been made leading up to this, insofar as like Iran goes and their religious authorities and everything, every single bit of it is intended to be a symbol and a message to the Americans. The event is expected to draw tens of millions of mourners and could reveal tensions beneath the surface. Vakil added. The Islamic Republic is expected to enact unprecedented security measures overseen by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, while the Basij paramilitary force will coordinate logistics, accommodation, and crowd management across various cities. Khameini's final resting place is in the holy city of his hometown, Mashhad, which holds profound religious significance for Shia Islam, and is where his father, the previous Ayatollah, is buried. So it's kind of wild. What has it been, like 3 different generations at this point? Wild. Khameini funeral route and schedule. The funeral has been designed as both a national and religious procession, touching some of the most significant sites in Shia Islam in Iran and neighboring Iraq. This is basically a political event portrayed as a religious one, designed to project legitimacy at home and deterrence abroad. Alex Vatanka, senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, told CNBC. Yeah, I don't really disagree with that, and I kind of think I was making that point a little bit earlier. It's more of a political display than it is a religious one. It's also heavily religious in nature, but it's just as much political in nature as it is religious. And it's interesting, right, when we're talking about this, because we, especially as Americans, we like to split these things up in our minds, and I think that it's right for us to do so. I think it's right for most people to have kind of that innate sense that separation of church and state is good, but it's kind of important for us to realize that even our own country doesn't really operate that way all the time, and that there are tons of other countries on this planet that explicitly do not operate that way. And when it comes to, like, countries with, like, fundamentalist religious Muslim leaders, like, Islam is just kind of like, so Islam is meant to be a holistic system for living life, not just a religion. Now, the argument I've always made, and that lots of other people have made and brought up too, is that that's how pretty much all of these religions started. Originally, Judaism, and there are still Jewish people that live this way to this day, was intended as not just a religious philosophy, but a codex on how you should live your life. And there are still some Jewish people to this day that treat it that way. There are almost no Christian sects outside of maybe the Amish that still treat the Bible as if it is a literal document to be taken as a holistic method for managing society, personal life, family life, and everything else. But Islam is still kind of in the it is in the peak of its feverish self-confidence, and it is in a position where, due to its adoption by a number of tyrannical governments, especially in the Middle East, they are able to keep those things intertwined in a way that Christianity and governance has not been so openly intertwined in a very long time. Mind you, I say openly there. I would argue that the United States is a Christian nationalist project in a lot of ways. I don't think it needs to be. I think there are better ideals that were even incorporated into its founding, but I think that it has a big history with Christian nationalism, and that despite the fact that we codify separation of church and state in many of our founding documents, tons and tons of our leaders have still used religious justifications when proposing or arguing for legislation, and we still have tons of politicians who have a religious morality that they base their decision-making on. Thank you, Melanie, for correcting the weird Christians that think that because I have a spirit board behind me, I obviously, I have to be like a fucking dues-paying Satanist. Listen, I've got no problem with Satanists, especially because most of them are secular humanists who simply use the image of Satan as a method of challenging Christian hegemony. But I'm not personally amongst their number. Still waiting for a comment about the conversation I'm trying to have. Make sure your opinions are your opinions. Islam would throw you off the building. You need to educate yourself. And okay. So let's clear a few things up here. All right. Number one, Islam does not universally reject trans people. In fact, Iran is one of a few Muslim countries where not only are you allowed to be trans, but the government will pay for your care because they have universal health care over there. Now, doesn't always mean you actually get that care. It's obviously, there's some availability problems there, like there are going to be in any country that's going through as many problems as Iran's gone through over the last 20 years, with the worsening climate crisis and now war and the constant, every 5 years attacks from Israel. They've been going through a lot, so I don't know that trans people are getting the same standard of care that they were getting at the time of the Ayatollah's original fatwa back in the 80s. Or early 90s, I can't remember which one it was, but it was within the first 15 years of the regime coming to power. They officially recognized transgender people and the necessity of their care. So, that's just one example. I could cite others, but we don't need to, because ultimately, the greater point to bring up here, and the more pertinent one, is that Muslims are not the ones responsible for launching this conflict. No, fundamentalist Christians and arguably fundamentalist Zionist Jewish people are responsible. Okay? So, we've got fundy Christians, and honestly, I feel like a lot of super religious Jewish people are anti-Israel. I've met and heard of and listened to so fucking few people who were both genuine believers, seemed like it anyway, in the shit that they were talking, and Zionists. Just doesn't happen that much. I get that there is a fundamentalist community in Israel, but it's also worth noting that they're one of the hardest ones to get to fight. So, anyway, leaving that aside, it's not Muslims that are responsible for this current conflict. If we're talking about the U.S.-Iran war, it is not Muslims who were responsible for the absolute proliferation of the highly financialized modern economy and the absolute dominance of the billionaire, the return of the robber baron. Yeah, that wasn't instituted by Muslims, my friend. That was instituted by Protestant Christians. For the most part. Just yapping about delusions? Yeah. Yapping about other people's delusions because they won't stop yapping about them themselves. If people would stop yapping about their delusional ideas about a magical daddy in the sky that watches them masturbate and cares what they do, but doesn't care enough about Gazan kids to stop their genocide, then yeah, I'm going to sit here and rant about nonsense because that's what people are feeding me. Get with it. Yeah, Muslims are not responsible for this mess. Islam has its problems. Don't get me wrong. I was just talking about some of them a minute ago. But Islam is not the source of our fucking problems in the modern day and age. Islam is a problem mostly for countries that have allowed their government to be co-opted by, the clergy. Which, by the way, is a problem that plagued the Christian nations of Europe for centuries. So don't come at me with some racist bullshit about how this is an explicitly Muslim problem or something like that. Don't give me no xenophobic horseshit, because Christianity had to go through these exact same growing pains. People fought entire wars partly on the basis of wanting to remove their religiously motivated or religiously justified dictatorial, tyrannical government from power. That was one of the motivating factors behind the fucking French Revolution, was the setting up of a secular democracy. theocracy is the issue. We love our siblings in Islam. Exactly. We love our siblings in these religious communities, but we do not love the fake fucking faiths that they follow. We do not love the philosophies that cause them and their siblings to go to war for false gods and false prophets. There's nothing but shame and dishonor in that. Wrong. The Crusades were not a response to Muslim aggression. The Islamic Empire had already petered out. Like what you're calling the Caliphate, I assume is what you're talking about. The Ottoman Empire, that literally petered out at basically like the southwestern edge of Europe and like maybe the farthest southeastern reaches, if you really want to fucking stretch the definition of Europe. Because there is a certain point where Europe becomes the Middle East. And there's a certain point where Europe becomes like Eastern Europe. And some people don't consider Eastern Europe part of Europe. Some people do. It just depends. And the point is that it was largely already done by the time the Crusades were launched. Yeah, so that's actually like I just proved that this is bullshit, right? So the Ottoman Empire in Spain feuded for control of Spain with each other for a long ass time. They never officially controlled Spain, but they engaged in fierce naval wars with them for control of the Western Mediterranean during the 16th century, and they effectively ended those conflicts with a 1581 truce. So yeah, and if we're talking about the Moors, that ended in 1492. So when Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella conquered Granada, ending over 700 years of Islamic presence in Iberia. But the Crusades happened almost a full fucking 200 to 400 years before that, lasting from 1095 to 1291. The first was to capture Jerusalem. The second was organized to recapture Edessa, but ended in total failure. The third was led by Richard the Lionheart, failed to recapture Jerusalem from Saladin. Fourth, diverted from its goal, it famously sacked the Christian city of Constantinople. So that originally was like, oh, we're gonna fucking go down here and, reconquer some Christian lands, whatever the fuck that means, from Muslim rule. What it ended up in actually being was just another attempt by the papacy to extend its earthly holdings by attacking its own ghost empire in the east, basically. And then you've got the fall of Acre in 1291, when the Mamluks captured the last major Crusader outpost, ending the Holy Land Crusades. So no, the Crusades were not initiated as a response to Muslim aggression. They were literally initiated because the Catholic Church wanted to increase its earthly holdings. And because, probably because leaders aligned with the Catholic Church wanted to do the same. By the way, in 30 minutes we are going to be switching over to a members-only live chat, so make sure you sign up for the membership right now and gift some if you are considering supporting the channel. We survive and thrive off of donations from viewers just like you, so if you're enjoying the conversation, please consider supporting. I do appreciate it. Hey Phoebe, how do you feel about the statement, if you do something solely because it is tradition, then you allow yourself to be peer pressured by dead people? I think it's 100% true. Yes. There's nothing wrong with maintaining a tradition if it makes sense in the modern context for reasons outside of for the sake of tradition, right? That, I think, I've heard that statement before, and I think it actually is one of the better illustrations of why the fallacy of traditionalism is such a fallacy. The idea that merely because we've always done something means that we've always got to do it this way, and having that be your only argument, or relying on that as the basis of your argument, is so bad. Because ultimately, people from way back then don't have to worry about you now. And like whatever material conditions you're living in your present day are going to be a lot more important and, well, material to your life than any cooked up nonsense and gibberish from people who lived 200 years ago who may or may not have produced good results. And so, if you've got something that is traditional or that has been passed on down from the ages, that is why it is so important to be critical and to critically think about the things that you're reading and the accounts that you're taking in of what people did and said. And that's why it's so important for people to constantly redo these experiments and to kind of refine things that have already been done in science, but to try and learn more about them and to push the experiments further and to refine the science even more, because ultimately that's how we maintain a current, reliable, trustworthy basis of knowledge for how the world works. Like, we're constantly re-engaging and reaffirming the science of yesteryear, and we are constantly debunking and dismissing the ancient religious myths of yesteryear. I don't like the vibes this person gives me, in quotes. Well, I don't like the vibes that a person gives me who would call me a person, but put it in quotes, gives me. So, I don't know. I think my vibes as a person who's willing to humanize you, even though that is a dignity that you will not bestow upon me, makes me clearly a better person than you are, but I guess we'll leave the chat to decide that. Coming on someone's live and complaining about the host talking so much is small brain activity. It's literally like tiny, like, okay, imagine a pea, right? A freshly harvested, unmolested pea, and you're holding it by the eye, right? That is their brain. It is smooth as a baby's ass. It is light as a feather. It is fucking full of nothing but starch, and it is so small that you wouldn't notice it from 100 feet away. Would you agree that the church is most likely an old money scandal that later became famous worldly because people would rather be thinking of heaven instead of nothing happening when you die? Yeah, more or less. I think it's more nuanced than that, but kind of. I think that a lot of people, when they start writing the myths that later become the, religions and shit that people practice in the modern day, if you talk to any biblical scholar or secular scholar that still studies theology, they will tell you, a lot of times when these things were written, we have every reason to believe that they were written as allegory and taken more seriously by later peoples. Or, in some cases, for example, in the cases of laws, right? There are many cases where law books exist where they were not actually intended to be permanent, forever, unchanging laws, but were rather a description of how things were at a certain point, and the context to that has been just lost to the ages, but there's still hundreds of millions of people, billions perhaps, who want to treat it as though it is, well, forgive me the pun, but gospel. It is all allegorical? Well, that's what the evidence would indicate. All of the evidence indicates that it was intended as allegory and taken more seriously by later peoples for either purely manipulative reasons or for reasons of sheer misinterpretation that became widespread. Get it. Get it. Get the weird bug. You know I hate a weird bug. Get it. Get it. Don't let it get me. Oh man, please fly away. Oh, I don't know what you are, but you're creepy as shit. Oh man, I hate living in the fucking swamp, dude. Why do I gotta live in the goddamn swamp? Bugs don't get this big in Missouri. Bugs only get this big in the fucking swamp. Dude, I gotta get the fuck on up out of Mississippi. You guys play Monster Hunter? There's a fucking Vespoid in here. Why would you live in Mississippi? Because my family fucking 80 years ago made the unfortunate decision of buying land down here. Listen, I was not my ancestors, okay? I would have kept moving west. I would have spent 1 week in this weather and been like, alright, family, pack up. We ain't sticking around here. I will never forgive my ancestors for leaving the beautiful temperate mountains of northern Georgia for fucking Mississippi. Phoebe does not support murdering people for their opinion. Where would someone even get that idea? What is your opinion on Christians' beliefs, values, and the recent actions, events, especially with recent assassination, Charlie Kirk theories, stuff like that? Well, if you've been listening to the stream for long, we were just talking about how the main reason why Iran is putting on like a multinational state funeral for their murdered imam is because Christian fundamentalists have utterly infested the halls of government power, from mayorships all the way up. And at this point, even the President of the United States and his closest cabinet members are infected with the brainworms of like weird white Christian nationalism and fundamentalism. And because of that, they genuinely believe that they can make the rapture happen, the end of the world occur, if they can simply do the right geopolitical positioning in Israel. And they don't care how many lives have to be lost in the affair, because they have a bogus, bullshit idea about what happens to people in the afterlife that they think excuses them and their genocidal bullshit, because it'll all come out in the wash. And I think that as far as people's personal moralities are concerned, most Christians have a personal morality that is a lot more similar to Jesus of Nazareth than the ill-tempered and cantankerous God of the Old Testament that fundamentalist Christians love to manipulate and utilize people, or utilize to manipulate people with, and love to utilize in furtherance of their nationalist, like anti-human, like foreign policy agenda. That God is, like, the God of the fundamentalists is a fundamentally different creature than Jesus of Nazareth, who had a, like, completely different set of ideas about what would happen to the evildoer and what would happen to those who did good. What do you think of the rearming of Japan and Germany? Germany's weapons have doubled in the last years, more than America now. It was an obvious and like predictable outcome of Donald Trump's presidency in 2016. I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton should have won, but I somehow doubt that Germany would be rearming to the extent that it is now if she had. I think Hillary would have been a lot stronger against Russia and would maybe have been willing to like take it to that kind of like red line position. And looking back at how long this fucking war has lasted, maybe that would have been the lesser of two evils after all. I don't fucking know. It's 10 years ago now, and I can't take back my vote for Gary Johnson. After all, why have the left nut or the right nut when you can have the Johnson? But putting that aside, I think that when Trump came to office and immediately started grousing about how much he hates NATO and how much they don't do enough and how they don't pay enough of their bills and yada yada yada, that kind of set the stage for European and Japanese rearmament. Because what are you gonna do when the country that has basically been offering you like most of your protection insurance since the 1940s suddenly gets a despotic ruler who just says, nah, we're not gonna do that anymore. These people don't pay us enough. They don't do enough. They're not paying the bills, so we're gonna cut them off. What would you do in that situation? I know what I'd do. Build tanks. Build drones. Missiles. If I was Germany, I'd be looking to set up some joint bases of my own, probably. Japan, too. And it sucks, because neither of those, like, honestly, Germany is pretty left-wing, but the right-wing movement is kind of gaining traction there, and Japan is still super fucking conservative and right-wing. And I genuinely believe that America kind of like being, you know, I feel like we are what is the word I'm looking for? I feel like we are I can't think of the phrase I'm fucking looking for. I hate it when this happens. I feel like we're a calming force, basically, on any kind of conflict or imperialism that Japan might want to do, because we don't really allow them to build their stuff up. But as we've been allowing them to do more of that, they've been doing more of that, and who knows? Like, there have been a number of Japanese politicians since 1945 who have talked openly about wanting to bring back the energy of the old ways and all that, and wanting to create like a Pan-Asian project headed up by Japan. So I do not believe that their imperialist ambitions are done. I fucking feel for that society that they got so many problems, but hey, it's their fucking choice for remaining so fucking goddamn insular. Okay? Nobody made them do that. It is not by ordinance by God, you know? It is not ordained by God that the people of Japan remain a fucking closed-off hermit country, okay? The political left in Germany have been doing all they can to make the shift happen. Professional fucking clowns. What have they been doing specifically? Like, the last thing I heard about Germany's politics was that you guys got legal weed, which seemed pretty cool to me, but... What's up, Scrim? We have spent $22 trillion since 1980, over and above what NATO has spent. Now, I know you don't inform yourself, pot talk, like the Tower of Babel. Okay, yeah. Now, I've read the Tower of Babel story because I grew up Christian, familiar with it. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Putting that aside, though, I don't care, especially insofar as the point that I was making, that we've spent a ton. It's not, like, it's got functionally nothing to do with the point. Or if it does, it just kind of, like, proves my point, if anything. So my point was that, obviously Germany is going to be increasing their fucking defense spending and shit if we are telling them that we're no longer going to be as supportive of NATO. And if we're indicating that we might withdraw from NATO, maybe. Like, you understand what I'm saying? You're kind of just proving my point. That, like, for a long time, they haven't really needed to do that because, like, we had a good thing going. By the way, I find it hilarious that you're complaining about $22 trillion in military-industrial complex spending when I fucking know your ass doesn't care about that, really. Not in any detached sense. You probably do not care about the billions of dollars we've spent on this needless war between us and Iran, but somehow you really want to moralize about how much money we've spent supporting NATO. Okay, buddy. You're making rice and eggs? Nice. At first I thought you said you're drinking rice and eggs. And I was like, that does not sound like a good drink. Are you shadow banned? Nope, you sure are not. You know that pride flag is against Christianity, right? Why would I give a shit? I'm not a Christian. It's not a Christian channel. I argue against Christians. And I have fun conversations with them too. I'm friends with a few. Taylor's one. But see, there's a difference between like the type of Christian that is like actually like really insecure about their faith and really like worried about the opinions of others and therefore feels the need to constantly defend it in the face of every atheist they meet, and the Christian who, like Taylor or like a few of the other people I could mention in chat, are chill about it because they are confident in their faith and they know or are comfortable with not needing to know all the answers, you know. Like they know they don't know all the answers and they're comfortable with that to some degree, and they figure it'll all come out in the wash. And most of them, in fact all of the ones I'm talking about in this particular sentence right here, are not bigoted, because for the most part bigotry is the product of insecure faith. Well, it's one of the I shouldn't say it's a product of it. It's one of the markers of it. Nobody muted you. Do not ever complain about getting timed out, muted, banned, or anything like that in this chat, because you will just get another timeout. You can ask, like, but, like, it's, I don't know, dude. Don't ask. Just fucking figure it out, okay? Context clues, context clues. Okay, listen, if you're going to ask, at least be self-effacing about it. That's what I'll say. If you're going to ask, be like, hey, I don't know what dumb thing I did, but I'm sorry. Let me know if you don't mind. You know? By the way, here in about 10 minutes, we're going to be switching to a members-only live chat. So, 10 minutes, be members only live chat. Anyone can watch, but you'll have to be a member to chat in the live chat. Send in your gifted memberships now if you want to support the channel, or sign up for the membership. Either membership level will enable you to participate in the live chat. I think the cheapest level is like $3. By the way, I have been thinking about something, because people are always telling me to hit the gym, right? And I was thinking, like, you know, I really do not want to pay for a Planet Fitness membership. It would be really nice if I could find a way to make the haters who supposedly want me to go to a gym so bad pay for that instead. And I've conceptualized a way to do it. I am going to, let's see, can I make a poll? Am I able to make a poll? I wonder if I'm able to make a poll from this spot instead. I don't think I am. Let's see. Is this one of the things I've got? No. Damn. Okay. Well, I guess we'll just have to take a poll by show of hands or something. But what I'm thinking is doing a tier. I'm either going to call the hater tier or the hit the gym tier. And I'm thinking I'll make it like, I don't know, some fraction of a total monthly cost of a Planet Fitness membership. Some fraction of that, like, I don't know, $8 or something. But I'm gonna do like $8. I'm thinking I'll do like a goal of I don't know. I'll have to do the math, but something like 10 memberships, not gifted, but 10 memberships that people buy themselves for themselves in that tier that renew once. So you've got to have it the first month, and then you've got to renew it again after you initially buy it, right? And if 10 people were to do that in that tier, I would give them exclusive access to like gym videos and like videos of me just, you know, doing like really long walks and shit like that. Just kind of like talking and taking in the scenery and stuff. Workout vids and shit. And like make it an active kind of like participant thing where every time somebody tells me to hit the gym, I can be like, you know, there's a membership tier for that. You can be part of the people who fund my weight loss journey. Now, what do you guys think of that? You get a decent amount of exercise working on the farm fee, but will continue at a reasonable pace. Well, one of the reasons why I kind of want to do this is because if I did get a gym membership that I had my haters or the few fucking people that genuinely are interested in seeing me better myself, if I were to get that, then I would be able to do a lot more exercise at times like the last week. Because for the last week, it has been so miserably hot that I really can't do much outside working around the farm because I just get too hot. Please, kitty, I keep moving you because you keep clawing me. If you keep clawing me, I'm going to move you every time. Anyway, so it's just been too fucking hot. Like, I have still done stuff, but I have had to keep it a lot less than I would like to be doing because it's so fucking hot. And when it's that hot and that humid, you can't really trust that your body is cooling itself off, even if you've got like a wet towel and shit, and you're wiping your face regularly to make sure that there's like a maximum layer of humidity available, or a maximum layer of dry skin or whatever, as little fucking water on your face as possible. No matter what you do, if it's fucking hot as shit, like in the 90s, like it has been the last week, and the humidity is over like 70%, it is just dog shit miserable. And people who are acclimated to that can work through it, but I am not one of the people that is acclimated to that. Of course, bro is trans. It's cis, and you don't have to spam it. You are not the main character in here, and you will be banned. Do the farm work in the middle of the night? I don't know if that was a real suggestion, but it's just not feasible, really. Like, I don't know, man. I think people have a misapprehension about how much light you have to do, like you have to do stuff outside. And I think the reason for that is because I think a lot of people are prone to the same, like, postponement fallacy that a lot of, my friends and I personally am too, are prone to, which is like the idea, oh, I've got this project and I'm going to get around to it just as soon as there's a night where it cools off and I can do it. And what really ends up happening is that it gets fucking put off until late summer, early fall, when temperatures in general are so much lower. And usually the reason why that happens is because somebody goes outside to try and do it at night and realizes how fucking dog shit damn near impossible it is to do anything at night. Unless you've got a pretty fucking sweet light setup. Are you male or female? I am Phoebe. Every human being should be entitled to at least one free name change. Like, one free fucking, no questions asked, no big deal, it's fine, just come in and do it, name change. Because how many people actually end up getting saddled with a name that matches them? Like, for real. Like, how many people actually end up with a name that, like, actually suits them? By the way, in 1.5 minutes, we are going to be switching to members-only mode, so please consider sending a gifted membership to someone out there that might need one or want one, or signing up for a membership yourself. Rock stars change their name all the time. Exactly. Exactly. You can't choose who to gift a membership. True. But you can throw them out there into the ether and hope that they land on one who needs it. Who is that? Dude, so somebody just left me a hateful comment, right? All it says is disgrace. And this is the profile picture. It looks like fucking Eminem. If you, like, took a picture of Eminem and had AI, like, someone literally took a picture of Eminem and went to AI and was like, make Eminem muscly. Wild. Joined 2 months ago, no subscribers. Yeah, that's not just a hate account. Anyway, members only time. Whee! Members only. Yay. Hello, Misty. Hello, Misty. Yay! And just like that, everything got better. Just like that. Let me step out for 1 second, though. I gotta use the bathroom. And then we will do another hour for our members to chat in. We have not gotten hardly any donations today. In fact, I don't think we got a single super chat, which is very weird. Very, very weird. Because yesterday and the day before, we had many a super chat. Much better. Alrighty. What is up? What is up? What is up? What is up, everyone? All my wonderful members. Oh, my wonderful members. Tom McDonald is a bitch. He can fuck himself. But from spreading hate, he's filthy rich. He can fuck himself. With an eat shit here and a fuck you there. Here and eat shit there, a fuck you everywhere he sees. Oh man. Anyway, what? My old channel was So in City. Yeah, I thought that was you. I was pretty sure that was you when I saw some of your comments. I was like, I think that's them. Have I seen the new Louis C.K. special? No, I have not seen the new Louis C.K. special. I am like a content obsessive, and so when I get hooked on a certain thing, I will stay hooked on that thing for just forever. And right now I'm hooked on confrontational content with leftists debating conservatives, kind of like I do here. But, you know, there for a while before that, it was audiobook obsessed, and I'm pretty sure that that's about what's going to be happening after. I don't know. I might check it out, though. I do need to, it's kind of like an always active effort for me to remember to keep my media intake diverse and broad-reaching, you know, like, make sure that I'm actually absorbing everything the culture's putting out to the best of my ability. Or at least getting a approximate overview. How do you think you should be prepared? What? Prepared how? Here's a hypothetical for you. It's 2028, and the candidates are Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat John Fetterman. I'd vote Republican in that case. I'm voting third party if that happens. Honestly, if that were to happen, if 2028 got to that point, I would unironically, I would see if something like that happened, it would only happen in the aftermath of a massive and very contentious Democratic primary that would almost 100% feature a genuine socialist or progressive. And if that person split off and did their own thing and tried to run like, fuck it, we are not letting two Republicans run against each other for the fucking presidency, fuck that. And they were like, vote me if you want something new, then I would vote that candidate. And because I'm voting for Fetterman. Who do you think should be president? Who do I think should be president? I think that we need to transition away from a model of government that is headed up by a single executive. Just to be real with you, I don't think anyone should be president. That is the answer that American leftists have been pretty unwilling to contend with and to, put out there, because it's seen as a rejection of something that is seen as foundational to our democracy, but it's really not. Like, you can have a democracy without, like, this one person at the top who can just decide that the will of the people doesn't matter anymore, even if their elected representatives are doing something that their elected representatives want to do and that the people want their elected representatives to do. A good person who's trans for president? I want someone who is highly qualified, and if they happen to be trans, I would be super happy about that. But I would also caution us against, like, advocating for someone specifically on that basis or anything. And I would advocate against, or I would warn against us being too gung-ho about the idea that that's necessarily going to translate into a win for public perceptions of trans people. I'm a lefty, but I'd prefer Massey over Fetterman. Might be because I'm very anti-Israel that my judgment is clouded. Well, I'm very anti-Israel too, but Massey being, like, anti-Israeli is not enough for me to vote for him. Mine. Massey's still got very backwards views on a number of different things. Yeah, man, the more I read about Thomas Massey, the less I'm liking him as a fucking candidate for president. I think, like, he might actually be the rare example of a Republican who's not, like, a complete monster and that maybe lives by some of his own values and shit. And, I don't get the perception from him that he's maybe as evil as a lot of his cohorts. But that, like, being the best Republican does not make you a good candidate to vote for, in my opinion. And given that opportunity, I would rather just spend it on, I don't know, voting a third party who I really do believe in, or an independent candidate that I really do believe in. Because I just looked up like his take on housing issues, his take on trans issues. That's the only two I've looked up so far. But I know his issue. I know where I agree with Massey at is that he's very pro-transparency when it comes to the Epstein files and prosecuting the people involved in that. And I know that he's pretty anti-Israel. Like, to some degree. I don't know, man. Baby question, would you rather a good person to be a president or someone who is cutthroat, who is pushing your views? A cutthroat with good policies. And I've made this argument before. If Donald Trump was engaging in basically everything he's doing, except for like the personal enrichment and all that shit, right? Which basically everything he's done in this second term has been involved in personal enrichment in some way. But if he was like abusing federal authority to bring a universal healthcare system about that could not be easily undone by later presidents, oh my god, that'd be awesome. If he was like abusing the Constitution and federal fucking authority and shit like that to like massively guarantee, like if he was a progressive doing all this same thing, all this same type of shit, and was braggadocious as he is and everything else, I would be a Trumpist. It's explicitly because his policies are evil that I oppose him. Honestly, like, the methods, as long as they're not, like the ends don't justify the means, but, like, the means can be justified by the ends to a degree, I think. Right? So I feel like it's a cost-benefit analysis. If what you're talking about, and I when I called into the line the other day, Jimmy Snow talked about this. One of the tasks, if we get a genuine progressive, and even if we get a centrist who we can pressure with progressivism, one of our biggest tasks to try and get actual change pushed through within the 4 years that we're guaranteed to have pretty much at 2028 is to figure out the new limits of power. Figure out where exactly they can go. Instead of trying to go back to the old norms and trying to play softball and work within the system that they want to defend so bad, what are the new guidelines and rules? What are the new fucking rules of engagement, basically? How far can we go? And how much can we get done for the American people? Here's how much Trump was able to do in furtherance of his own wealth and horrible genocidal foreign policy. Now let's see how far we can go with those same limits in a completely different direction. I think it's definitely that time. I 100% agree. Do you think they would have the willpower to correct the ship, or would they just be used and stepped on? Well, that's why I think you need this, like, cutthroat that we're talking about, right? That's why I think you need someone like a Huey Long, honestly. Huey Long was basically like a leftist Trump, like 100 years before Trump existed. He, like, look him up, look into him. He's called the Kingfish. And a big old fat guy. And hardcore fucking leftist. And he was also kind of a tyrant. You know, he kind of dragged Louisiana kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Or into the 20th century, I guess you'd say. Huey Long is fascinating. He really is. I really want to do a video one of these days talking about Huey Long and what he did for Louisiana and the repercussions that had on southern leftist movements since then, and kind of like the rural lefty movements that led up to it and everything. Oh man, I think it would be such an awesome and fun research project, and it would be, I think, pretty interesting to present to you guys as a topic. You guys interested in that? No, I got you, Melanie. You're fine. Like, don't get me wrong. I want a nice person, good person as president to wisely zero. Well, like, that's the thing, man. I want that when things are figured out and you need people to keep the ship upright and running the right way, right? But when the ship is actively in the process, like, here's how I would look at it. If this country is a ship and we are on the ocean, we are on course to collide with an island, presently, right now, as we speak. We're right there. The captain is not moving us out of the direction of that island. Well, rather, is not moving our direction out of the path of the island, because the island is immobile, of course. It's not like we got in its way. We are about to run aground. 5 years, 10 years, if we don't change direction, we are going to run aground. And more people know it, right? And so basically what, in my mind, the options that the crew has, the crew being the citizenry of the United States, is either they can go the regular peaceful route and either elect for a good person who is nice and wise and everything, but is more, esoteric, maybe, I don't know how to put it, versus someone who is basically like the captain you have right now, but seems a little bit smarter and is about 30 years old, younger. And the other option is like a mutiny, and we install one of our own, and that person is going to have to be, if we're taking this metaphor, right, that person has to be a cutthroat. Whoever the person is who rises up out of the crew and goes up there to the helm and drags the old captain off and throws him to the masses. For them to keep their hands on that helm and to start dragging it to the starboard side, direction, whatever, they are going to have to be a cutthroat, because there are people on the ship that want it to collide with the island. Because there are some people, right, for whom they're mistaking the island for Epstein Island. So they're actually quite happy that they're about to be washed ashore of its golden beaches. But most of us don't want to collide with the goddamn island. The problem is that the people who do want to collide with the island are very intelligent and very, very, very powerful. And really, they're not that intelligent. They're very manipulative. That's a better way to put it. They're very manipulative, and they're incredibly powerful. They're like the merchants aboard the ship, basically. And they're the ones who control the treasure stores. So most captains are afraid to piss them off. Most captains are afraid to not treat them well enough, because when they get to port, those merchants can fuck them over. We need a captain that's not going to give a shit about that. That is going to realize that it's not going to matter what the fuck happens at port if we never make it to fucking port. Yes, but the tulpa we all see as tearing out the roots is never the unified. They are different people. Yeah, very true. You're fine, Melanie. Are you drunk or something? That'd be funny. To do these things, they need someone who won't allow themselves to be stepped on. Precisely, Matt. Now you're starting to see it. This is why President Johnson was able to get so much done. And, you know, why he is still known as like a shrewd political thinker and negotiator to this day is because President Johnson didn't let a little thing like a lack of a fucking caucus to get in his way. President Johnson didn't let a little old thing like a major scandal get in his way, you know? Johnson was willing to break any alliance and forge any new one, willing to do any show of power that he had to or felt was within his purview or ability to get what he wanted to get done. And like, honestly, we need someone like that again. Because when that person's personal agenda is like a Mamdani level progressive fucking leftist agenda, then what you're talking about is another Kingfish. Or another Johnson. I just got back from the bar with friends. That makes me happy, honestly. Melanie's all drunk and happy. With the trains tonight. Fuck, bro. This is like the 9th goddamn train tonight. I guess America's production must be getting back up to full sway. Honestly, for the last couple of months or so, like the last 3 months, I would say, as the Iran war has been ramping up and as the price of oil has gotten higher and higher, I noticed that the trains became less and less frequent. Over the last few days, they've been getting more so. And smoking, hell yeah, hell yeah. Hopefully I won't have to run in, but we'll see. Hand smoking, hell yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I can't stay on that much longer, but we're gonna try and do another, yeah, we'll do another 30 minutes, hopefully. I'm glad you're having a good time, Melanie. That makes me happy. A toddler was declared dead but was found alive in morgue. You know, Matt, they say many peasants in the former Roman Empire didn't realize that the empire had fallen until the bridge fell down and nobody came around to repair it. Cool. Happy 4th. Happy 4th, Melanie. Yeah. A lot of Roman peasants did not realize that the empire had fallen until a bridge fell down in their area and nobody came around to repair it. I'm not even kidding about that, by the way. May the revolution start in the morning? I kind of doubt it. Damn, yet another year that I'm missing out on Rainbow. Fuck. That makes me sad. I'm so sick of missing Rainbow. I haven't been since 2023. Sad. As a history student, absolute truth. Well, I just think it's something I keep thinking about every time somebody tells me. Honestly, with most news stories I read coming out of my country, America, these days, I just think back to that sentiment. The idea that, like to the average person, you don't really realize that society has collapsed until fundamental parts of your infrastructure just stop working as intended. Like, that's when the actual, fucking what the actual fuck is going on starts. But that's one of the problems, man, with human beings being so not far-sighted, like being so short-sighted, right? We are such short-sighted fucking creatures. And because we're such short-sighted, regarded creatures, right? We don't often realize that something is a deep and profound problem until it's effectively too late for us to stop it or for us to abate the worst of its effects. And so we have to deal with way worse effects than we should have to and mitigate with worse strategies and more work than it would have required if somebody with some fucking foresight would have been consulted at some fucking point in the process. And that's one of the reasons why I support democracy, by the way. One of the big reasons why I think that democratic ideals are good and that people should have a say in how they are governed is because I feel like so much of the reason why progress has been stymied and human beings have made mistakes in our governance and our governmental structures and shit like that in the past has been because of the highly hierarchical types of governance that have been predominant throughout human history. Or not throughout human history, but throughout, the history of civilization, certainly. The more people you have involved in the process, the more people you have wanting to actively be involved in their own governance and their own, rule, the more you can avoid things like a major pollution disaster because you just didn't think about the way you were throwing out the trash right, or a major climate disaster because not enough people were involved in the decision-making process as to how energy was going to be produced and everything. Is there a reason that your ex-partner can take the kiddo for a few weeks? You could go. No, it's too late now. It's too fucking late now. Yeah, no. Not really. It's sad, but it is what it is. My hope is that by this time next year, I've got a car that is 100% my own, and like an arrangement that will allow me to do something like that. Or, you know, by that time, my kid might be old enough for him to be watched by a babysitter. If I just couldn't make the arrangement work otherwise. Damn, Economos has no chill. Instagram running ads promoting child sexual abuse material in India. BBC fines. See, that is one of those headlines. That is one of those things that if you had read that out, if anybody had read that in a newspaper in the 1980s, I feel like that would have been the end of that company worldwide. I feel like there's probably multiple people who would, like, I feel like there's probably multiple employees of that company who would have been, like, surreptitiously killed. I'm not saying that it would be morally right for that to happen. I'm just saying that, like, it shows you how much society has changed and how much the global population, not just the American population, but particularly the American population, has become numb to social murder, has become numb to the utter depravity that is enabled by the worship of the upper 1%, the worship of the billionaire class, by the unfair hierarchies of capitalism. In the 90s too? Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%, yeah. Literally, puke-inducing headline. And the weird thing is that I, as a human being in 2026, am still so trained by the fucking algorithm and by the dominance of these companies and by their fucking social acceptance and everything else and all the arguments that even I am sitting here thinking, is there any way that that could be, like, overblown? Like, is it maybe, like, okay, because... But I realize as I'm sitting here having these thoughts, I am literally about to sit here and play defense for some big giant megacorp that it was effectively advertising CSAM. And I'm not gonna, because now I've caught myself and realized that that very thought process is the product of propaganda, the product of fascist pro-corporate propaganda that has been so normalized in our society that many people don't even see the problem with Citizens United, much less the problem with big things like this. Or, like, there's so many people that literally refuse to accept that one of these two things cannot be true. Either either corporations are people and therefore can have a political voice on all this, but are also responsible for their actions and can be convicted and prosecuted and fucking like dissolved even, right? Which would basically be like the corporate equivalent of a death sentence, right? Okay? Either that is true, or corporations are not people and cannot have a political voice, and people have to be held individually liable. Either way, like, literally would be better than, like, this current kind of hybrid way that we treat it. Because the way we treat corporations in this country are like when we treat them like people when it comes to justifying their political activism, and we treat them like companies when it comes to like taxes and all this other shit. When it comes to taxes or when it comes to like taxes or getting away with social murder or getting away with like massive abuse of human beings, like then they're treated like corporations. When it comes to like real, true, egregious criminal liability, then all of a sudden corporations are usually treated like companies, like large groups of people that are officially linked, but in ways that reduce their own personal liability legally, which is absurd, right? So like those two stances are contradictory to each other, and one of them needs to go away. Citizens United should have started a revolution. Not ironically, yeah, literally. Because that is what did this. That is basically the court decision that determined that corporations are people. And that they can have political opinions and can unite together to form these big lobbying groups and can fund them and direct them and everything. However, that same ruling has not, for some reason, been used to argue that corporations should also be held to the same stringent standards of criminal liability that individuals are. You know, if an individual person poisons a fucking creek or something, they can get a fine that might be similar to a corporation doing the same amount of damage. That's ridiculous. That is fucking ridiculous. Like, it should literally be treated like if you fuck up and let some big spill happen and don't appropriately report it, or like you don't go through every fucking correct channel and do everything by the book, and you fuck up the environment, even if it's like not gonna do that much damage, it's not that big a deal, these companies need to start being treated like fucking, I don't know, if they're going to be treated like fucking people in the political scene, we need to start treating them like criminal, or like people in the fucking courtroom when it comes to prosecuting their asses. And that means dissolving them when they fuck up enough. If the state has the legal right to end your life, if you're a citizen who fucks up badly enough, then the state has the legal right to end a corporation's existence if it fucks up badly enough. Especially if under Citizens United, we're going to assume that corporations are people. Or we could end Citizens United, and we can continue prosecuting individuals for their individual fuck-ups and involvement in the fuck-ups, and prosecute the corporations as corporations like we currently do. But if we're gonna do that, we need to end Citizens United so they ain't got a fucking political voice. Because, like, the way we've got it right now, it's literally, we have a giant conflict of interest that makes our country intrinsically fascist, even when it's not culturally fascist. Like, fascism's got just as much to do with strict, rigid control, or not even strict, rigid control of the economy, but rather like an interconnected, incestuous relationship between the controllers of the economy and the like controllers of the political realm and everything. Like, that is a fundamental aspect of fascism. It's not just the social authoritarian shit. It's also the idea that the state and corporations are doing all these back-end deals and shit to like reduce private companies' liability and reduce government liability and put more and more risk and liability on the working class. let's see, death by firing squad, Idaho, opens new execution chamber, becoming the seventh state to include it among its roster of execution methods. Oh. Giving dead men walking even more choices by which they might say their way out of this world. Death by firing squad, just like every other form of execution, is a barbaric practice. But I honestly will say that death by firing squad is a particularly barbaric practice because it saddles. Often the argument is made that the way a firing squad works, with 5 people, only 2 of them ever being given a bullet, maybe 3 of them, every so often all of them will be given one. Every so often none of them will be given one, and somebody like that they don't even know about does the shot as they're shooting. But the argument behind it is that it reduces the guilt of conscience of those involved by stretching it over so many people and giving them all reasonable doubt as to their own personal involvement in the tragic affair. But every single one of those people comes away with the knowledge that they might have been the one who pulled the trigger, just as much as they come away with the knowledge that they might not have been. They know it's a 2 in 5 chance, 3 in 5 chance. They might not even know what chance it is. But they know on some level that they may have pulled the trigger that cast a bullet that ended the life of someone who may or may not have been guilty. Ultimately, guilt is only ever truly known between the guilty and the damned. By damned, I'm using it in the archaic sense, meaning a victim of something. Not necessarily like, damned to hell. Damn, that's a cold-ass quote now that I just thought about it. When it comes to the matter of guilt, true knowledge only exists between the guilty and the damned. Corporations don't have liability that's easy to prove as an individual entity. That's why it's not easy to place blame when they cause damage. Well, right, but they are considered enough of a unified entity to be able to have legitimate political opinions, right? So you see where I'm saying that there's like a major hypocrisy here that is like kind of enforced at a federal level and that kind of makes us intrinsically fascistic. Because on the one hand, we allow corporations to have a political voice, but on the other hand, we don't prosecute them like other organizations and individuals that have a political voice, right? Which means that they can influence policies that will not affect them directly as an entity, even though they are using their existence as an entity to help create those policies. It's what's called a conflict of interest. Okay, we're gonna do one last news story before we go. Got 15 minutes left, and Matt sent me something he says is huge, so we'll look at it. Truly international network of drug-facilitated rape uncovered by UK crime agency. NCA says offenders arranged to essay and film victims via online networks, with crimes often taking place in trusting relationships. Criminal investigators in the UK say they have uncovered a truly international network of organized drug-facilitated sexual assault in which victims are sedated before being raped and sexually assaulted. The National Crime Agency has said online networks, quote, many as yet unidentified by law enforcement, end quote, were allowing offenders to arrange to rape and abuse victims or arrange for sexual assaults to be filmed. In many cases, these crimes are being perpetrated by those who utilize the existence of committed, trusting, and often long-term relationships to perpetrate and facilitate offending. Agency said, giving the example of the high-profile Giselle Pellicot case in France. Since it began investigating an online forum in October of last year, NCA has identified more than 270 individuals linked to that forum and its successors. Nigel Leary, the NCA's deputy director, said it had disseminated more than 210 intelligence packages relating to suspects and potential victims to law enforcement partners in the UK and overseas, with more than 90% of those being sent abroad. Holy shit. Leary said, "We believe we have uncovered a truly international network with group members identified in dozens of countries, spanning every continent." He said domestically the intelligence packages had resulted in at least 14 separate investigations, with 8 victim survivors safeguarded. Damn. That's not a lot. That's not a lot. They're not, like, really pointing that out or making much of a note of it, but that's nothing. They've uncovered 270 different individuals linked to the forum and its successors, and they've only gotten 14 different investigations. Now, maybe some of those investigations involve multiple individuals, so hopefully some of them do, but they've only fucking safeguarded 8 victim survivors. That does not sound like they're making much headway, which is kind of more terrifying than anything. He said online platforms were, quote, enabling and supporting direct offending. Well, fucking hell yeah, they are. Duh! Well, yeah. No shit. Dude, people have been making this fucking case and talking about this for years now. Years and years. And, like, the problem has remained a problem since the 90s because nobody has a good solution to it. Nobody has a solution to it, period. Nobody has a solution to it. A solution does not exist for the problem. It simply does not. Even Paul's, like, 2-account, 3-account idea, it's nonsensical. It would not work with our internet infrastructure as it exists currently. Our internet infrastructure was designed... A lot of people... And it's weird that Paul... doesn't realize the technical infeasibility of the idea when I know he knows this about the internet. But a lot of people don't, right? So I'll tell you guys, if you don't realize, the internet was not codified and created as like a wonderful place for social media networks to set up and people to have friends and all that, Like, the internet was created as a protocol for the military and government to send messages that were, that could be encrypted easily and yet still sent very easily, instantaneous transmission. It was basically the idea of taking all of the existing telegram and fax and phone lines and transforming them into something that could, send all of that different information at once, way quicker than any of the existing protocols at the time could. And because of that origin, it's kind of built on like a highly adaptable architecture that is pretty like set in stone because of how universal so many of its components are. I mean, no matter who you are in the world, no matter where you are in the world, your internet works the same way. On some level. Like, on a deep enough level, it all works basically the same way. And uses basically all the same technology. And in order to effectively implement something that actually dealt with this in the way that people like Paul talk about, you would have to you would basically have to invent a new internet. And you would basically have to like create an entire new you would have to craft legislation to make it so that consumer technology can only connect to this new internet. And even then, people are still going to get around it because they're still going to jailbreak their shit. Hacker culture is not going to die just because these companies say no. Just because the governments say no. So it's like fundamentally an infrastructure and architecture problem. The way things work does not allow for that type of like rigid, skirtable, lockdown kind of shit. You lock down all the ports people are currently using to, go to the websites and social medias with and all the fucking illicit bullshit with, and you lock those down, you make it to where the 3-account solution is the only way you can get in and out of that shit. I guarantee you within 2 or 3 years there's going to be some hacker group that releases some kind of software update that is passed around on a USB stick or something that will enable you to get back on the regular internet, which is now growing once again, in addition to all the websites you can still access, but now you're doing it through different ports. Literally, that's all that would happen. You might restrict every single port, but then you're going to have to do a major fucking tech upgrade and update on tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of tech. Because sure, web pages, fine, you might be able to accept that web pages are going to be kind of broken, or are not going to work as smoothly on some consoles and shit like that. But can you really accept the idea that online gaming's not going to work anymore? Because, now all these consoles have to use some API to log into that system before they try connecting, and they're not able to do it because they don't have that programming? I don't know, man. Try to have a good weekend, everyone. See you for now. Well, thank you for stopping in, Shawnee Brown. Think it's connected to Epstein? Yeah, almost certainly. Discussions include inviting other people to take part in the sexual assault, seeking advice on the best drugs or sedatives to use and how to administer them, asking for specific abuse to be conducted and filmed, and also coordinating offending, arranging to rape and abuse victims, sharing methodologies, and developing tactics to avoid detection. In many of the cases we've seen so far, individuals have become victims of sexual assault crimes while sedated, adding that people may have not been aware of it when it happened. Well, yeah, I would assume. Leary said the scale of what investigating officers had seen so far was deeply concerning and that it was no longer isolated behavior but increasingly organized. Intelligence indicates there have been and are other groups, many as yet unidentified by law enforcement, still involved in this type of offending, adding that cases were almost certainly underdetected and underreported. Yes, that's what I was just talking about too, or one of the things I was talking about. Giselle Pellico's ex-husband, Dominique Pellico, was jailed for 20 years for drugging and raping her, as well as allowing dozens of other men to rape her while she was unconscious, an abuse that lasted nearly a decade. 50 men were found guilty of rape or sexual assault offenses after a 3.5-month trial in Avignon, which ended in December 2024. In a separate operation, Europol said on Thursday it had worked with law enforcement agencies from 7 countries to identify 156 victims and perpetrators in an unprecedented operation targeting drug-facilitated sexual assaults. So yeah, I'm not going to read this whole thing because it was just going to take me forever because I'm a slow reader. But yeah, so I think it's almost certainly connected to Epstein because he had a hand in almost every horrible development that's happened with the publicly accessible broader internet. And the dark web too, since the early 2000s, basically since, when the internet started becoming a thing, man, there needs to be a Jeffrey Epstein documentary, a better one. I'm pretty sure there's a couple out there already, but there needs to be, Michael Moore needs to do one. That's who really needs to do it. Because Jeffrey Epstein, from what I can tell, and this is just me piecing it together from the files I've read and the things I've, interviews of his and fucking public statements and people talking about him and his rise and his articles and everything else, right? From what I can tell, Jeffrey Epstein, because he was a rich fucking power broker in New York City with a bunch of connections all over the country, was kind of at the bleeding edge of everything going on in America at all times. And because of that, as soon as the internet kind of became a thing, he started becoming a thing on it and figuring out ways that he could make money with it. He was one of the earliest adopters of Bitcoin, for example, from what I remember. And Ghislaine is the same way. Ghislaine was like a Reddit mod and had like thousands and thousands of karma points or whatever on Reddit. So she was like a Reddit power user, basically. Mod on a bunch of different, like, really huge subs. I've heard that there used to be a lolly sub or some shit that she was a fucking mod for, before Reddit started cracking down on that kind of thing. Rightfully so. Just, like, the history there is fucking insane and pretty gross, and indicates, especially when you consider that Epstein and Steve Bannon were both involved in the rise of 4chan and some of the other, like, toxic forums and, like, some of the predominance of the dark web and shit. When you realize how much of that is connected, it's not a far jump to think that there might be some Epstein files shit tied to these investigations. If there is, I bet you that it comes out in the next few months. The internet was set up to have continuous control and keep track of. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But because of that, right? Well, not just because of that, but because of what their priorities were in achieving those goals. That's why it makes it hard to change how the internet works, right? Like, if you want to implement some kind of great filter that keeps kids to kids sites and lets adults visit adult sites without separate age verification and everything, if you want to do something like that, it involves a complete retooling of all kinds of network infrastructure. It's basically something that you would have to pass a law 20 years before it was meant to be turned on, mandating that companies start building their tech to be able to handle the transition, right? And to have it built into there. And then, after like 20 years, when there's been enough turnover and there's been enough products that are made that way, that are available cheaply on the market, that everybody can be expected to transition, that's when the old internet just don't work no mo, and you gotta use the new internet shit, which requires you, as part of your initial setup process, to verify your age. But that's how you'd have to do it, and that would just be like a Herculean undertaking. Hey, what's up, Maria? You know, I hate to sound like Ted Kaczynski, but a lot of times I kind of feel like this whole internet and social media thing, it might be the great filter everybody talks about. That thing that just eventually ends a civilization. You just can't get past it. Maybe this is what takes big civilizations that gets advanced enough. Maybe this is what takes us out. Because it makes people stupider. It makes them less capable of critical thinking. It enables depravity on like coordinated depravity of varieties and types never before seen. It is, in other words, a fresh hell, and one we perhaps do not have to endure. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. Thank you guys for hanging out. But it's getting pretty late, and I want to get to sleep so I can wake up in the morning and hopefully find my shit unmolested in ARC. Good night, everyone.